Johnny Talk Sports here with the Week 4 college football predictions. Now, unfortunately, one of the 5 games I predicted last week, Houston and Baylor, couldn't get played due to concerns of COVID-19. But of the other 4 games I predicted that were able to get played, I got 2 of them right and 2 of them wrong. Tulsa did give Oklahoma State a run for their money. Spencer Sanders left the game with a back injury. Backup quarterback Ethan Bullock didn't do too much in the offense. But third-string quarterback Shane Illingsworth stepped up, made a couple of passes to Tylan Wallace. Chuba Hubbard got better the further on the game went. Not the prettiest of victories for Oklahoma State, but a win is a win, and that will boost confidence moving forward for the Cowboys. UCF just dominated Georgia Tech, and I really thought the Yellow Jackets were going to hang in there with UCF. But UCF quarterback Dylan Gabriel, he is going to have a good season, I can already tell. I look forward to seeing UCF later on in the season. And I thought that App State was going to beat Marshall. But Marshall had a dominant running game. And Grant Wells, he made a couple of solid throws in the matchup. And also, give it to Marshall's defense, allowing 7 points. For Marshall's defense only allowed 7 points in their first 2 games of the season. I know it was just Eastern Kentucky in the first week, but still, a shutout is a shutout. And App State did have a couple miscues in that game, but Marshall's defense and running game was really dominant from start to finish. Even Grant Wells, he had a really good game. I can't wait to see Marshall in the upcoming weeks. And Miami and Louisville. I thought Louisville was going to pull off the win against Miami because it feels like every year we talk about the U being back, but I wasn't sold on the U at this time last week. But De'Aaron King, it looked like Miami's offense was on a whole nother level. In fact, I think De'Aaron King is the best quarterback that Miami has ever had, ever since Ken Dorsey. It just looked like Miami was just able to move the ball at will against Louisville last week. Putting up 47 points last week. I feel like the sky is a limit for Miami, although we're going to see how good Miami is in a couple of weeks when they take on Clemson. And that's going to be an exciting one. And as far as the matchups in college football, I'd say it's a really good season so far. Maybe it's not the best season ever, but it's really great based off of what we've been able to have this season. I mean, you've got to give it up to not only Trevor Lawrence, but I think you got to give it up to Nebraska, because I feel like if it wasn't for Nebraska, I'd say college football doesn't happen. I'd say Nebraska's one of, if not the main reason why college football is even being played this year. Because Nebraska players really spoke out about playing this season before Trevor Lawrence did. Unfortunately, Trevor Lawrence only gets the attention because he's the face of college football right now. But with SEC play starting this week and the Big Ten announcing that they will play a 9-game season starting on the weekend of October 23rd, October 24th, I feel like the sky is the limit for the college football season. And I think the later on we get, the more hyped up we're going to get about matchups. It's going to feel like normal, but the only thing that won't be normal is the crowd sizes. Hopefully we get back to normal in 2021, but I'm just happy that I get to talk about college football this season, because I will admit, I really didn't think we were going to see college football this year. But I was kind of confident in NFL. But this is college football. NFL is tomorrow. So let's get right to my Week 4 picks. Now, I will say that I have 7 games this week. And I'm talking about them in the order of kind of, like, I want to get the least ones that I don't think I'll be entertained by personally, because I try to think like you guys. Because I think a lot of you aren't going to find this first game interesting, and that is Florida State and Miami. Now, we saw Miami's offense move the ball at will against Louisville last week, and De'Aaron King, he does look like a Heisman candidate. And the reason why I don't think you're going to personally be interested in this, because I've seen a lot of fans say that this is going to be kind of a boring matchup, and I don't understand why College Game Day is here at this game. I don't understand it either for multiple reasons. One, because they covered a Miami game last week. Two, there is a lot better matchups this week. Like, why couldn't they go to Kentucky and Auburn? That's a top 25 matchup. Why couldn't they go to Army and Cincinnati? That would have been a good match, and that's what I think is the game of the week. So I'm getting the Army and Cincinnati last this week. And I think Miami's going to blow out Florida State in this game. Because I want to repeat something I said last week. Florida State should have easily lost to Georgia Tech by at least maybe 20 points. Florida State looked that bad on offense. They got bailed out by their defense several times. They got bailed out by their special teams several times, blocking 3 kicks. Asante Samuel Jr. getting 2 interceptions on defense. Really, the special teams and defense really kept this game from being a 20-point victory for Georgia Tech. Now I'm going to pick Miami to dominate this game. I think De'Ara King has another Heisman-like performance. In fact, I think he's going to do a lot better this week. But if Florida State's defense can keep the Seminoles in the game, we'll see. But unfortunately, head coach for the Seminoles, Mike Norvell, has tested positive for COVID-19, so he will not be on the sidelines this week. And I think that's going to be a huge loss for Florida State. And I think Miami's going to win this game. I'd say handily. I'm going to say by 21 points the Hurricanes will win. I think De'Ara King's going to have maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns in this game. Next, we have Kansas State and Oklahoma. Kansas State pulled off the ups against the Sooners last year. Can they do it again this year? Now, this is Spencer Rattler's first FBS game. Now, he did, against an FBS opponent, I should say. So we will see just how good Spencer Rattler could be, or what his potential is. Because we saw him against, I think it was South Missouri State or Missouri State or whoever it was. Either way, I feel like that doesn't really count. I think that Spencer Rattler has to play a FBS team. Now, I think if Kansas State were to win this game, they would have to have a familiar game plan of last year. Assert the running game. Keep the Oklahoma offense on the sidelines. Do I think they're able to do that? No, because last year, who I think was the player of the game, James Gilbert, is not on the Wildcats anymore. And I think Oklahoma, I think that they have studied Kansas State's running game from last year. And I'm not sure if Kansas State is that confident going into this, because last time we saw the Wildcats, they fell victim to the upset bug against Arkansas State in a game where they probably should have won that game. As much as I think they're going to come out with a chip on their shoulder, I just don't know if they feel that confident. But I'm going to pick the Sooners in this one, although I do think, though, that it could be closer than what the experts are thinking, what Vegas is thinking. But I still think the Sooners will win this game outright. Next, we have the Florida Gators and the Ole Miss Rebels. For Ole Miss, the first game with Lane Kiffin as the head coach. And for the Florida Gators, not only a team that many experts are saying could dethrone Alabama for the SEC championship, but a team that can sneak into the College Football Playoff. Now, I can understand why they think that, but Florida has multiple obstacles to still get over. They still have to beat Georgia, a team they haven't beaten in years, and they have to win the SEC championship to get into the playoff. And I don't know if they're going to be able to accomplish both of those goals. I think they could accomplish one of them, but I don't know if they can accomplish both of them. So I'm going to pick Florida to win this game, although if this was a game that I would say is played in November And if it was under normal circumstances, like prime time, sellout crowd, I'd pick the Rebels in this game. But since it's the first game of the season, and with new head coach Lane Kiffin, and you having a coach that is multiple years into this Florida system in Dan Mullen, I'd say it's a recipe for a Florida win. Although I do want to see Ole Miss fight, though. I think quarterback John Rice Plumlee could be an X factor in this matchup if they choose to start him at quarterback, which I'm sure that he's going to be the starter. But if not, he definitely should be, because I think he would be an X factor in this matchup. But I will pick the Gators in this one. But I'm not sold on Florida yet. I'm not sold on them being a team that could sneak into the college football playoff. I'm not. I got to see him beat Georgia first before I can consider that statement. Next, we have Tennessee and South Carolina. Now, this is a must-win for both teams, I believe. For Tennessee, you've got to prove yourself this year. After Tennessee had a phenomenal end of the season last year, they got to prove they're not all hype. Because what happened last time when we thought Tennessee was a team that was all hype, they got tested by Appalachian State opening weekend. And they had quite a few close games that year, including a Hail Mary against Georgia. And for South Carolina, I think Will Muschamp is on the hot seat. And I think if South Carolina doesn't at least have a 5-win season, I think that Will Muschamp is going to be out the door for South Carolina. For Tennessee, Jarrett Garantano is going to be the starting quarterback for the Vols this Saturday night. And for South Carolina, I'm surprised that Ryan Helinski isn't the starting quarterback this week. Maybe they see something in the backup that we don't. But could this be a defining moment for South Carolina for a positive or negative impact? I feel like either way, this decision will define the South Carolina season, whether if it's in positive terms or negative terms. If it's negative terms, I think it's going to lead to Will Muschamp being out the door for the Gamecocks at the end of the season. But I think Tennessee will win this game based off the momentum they have last season to end the season after an abysmal start, starting 0-2. But this could be a test for Tennessee, really. Like, they could get tested as South Carolina could give them a run for their money. Because we've seen already multiple teams are given a run for their money. Even teams get outright upset like Iowa State and Kansas State a couple of weeks ago. But I will take the Volunteers in this matchup. Next, we have Louisville and Pitt. For Louisville, they are looking to bounce back after a loss to Miami last week. And Pitt, well, they have shown a strong performance so far this season, I would say, based off of their competition. But they've only played Austin Peay, who also got blown out by Cincinnati last week, and they suffered a heartbreaking loss against Central Arkansas, which Austin Peay has surrendered their fall season, as they were only supposed to play 3 games before the start of the FCS season in the spring. Well, not spring, but in 2021. At least I'm sure it's going to be the spring of 2021. Not really sure, but back to Louisville and Pitt. They've played Austin Peay and they played Syracuse, and they only were able to score 21 points in that game. But Syracuse, they did give North Carolina a run for their money. They competed hard with them for the first 3 quarters, but North Carolina, they ultimately turned the gas on. Well, not really turned the gas on, but they flipped the switch in the 4th quarter of that game. But I'm going to take Louisville in this one. I think despite Louisville losing last week, they'll play the chip on their shoulder, and I think they're going to pull off this win. I still think Louisville's good offensively. I think that their defense might need a little work this week, although it could also be because Miami's offense is just going to be that good this season. We just don't know what kind of the repercussions are from last week's Miami and Louisville game. But I'll hit the Cardinals in this one. Next, we have Kentucky and Auburn, a top 25 matchup. Now, I'm looking forward to seeing Bo Nix in this game. I think Kentucky could keep this game close. Because Auburn, they lost a few defensive pieces from last season. They've lost Derek Brown, they lost Marlon Davidson, and they lost Noah Igbiagani. Just name a couple. But I still think Auburn could be led by Bo Nix to victory in this one. I think now that Bo Nix had his freshman season, I think he's going to have a phenomenal sophomore season. And it seems like when Kentucky gets some hype, like when they get like at least somewhat of a high ranking, they seem to run into a buzzsaw and they just get blown out. We saw that with Georgia a couple of years ago. And I think this could happen with Auburn as well. But I'm thinking since it's the first game of the year and so many teams are playing for the first time and some are playing for the first time in weeks, I can see there still being some rust. But I think Auburn will still win in the end. I just like Bo Nix. I think if he needs to be clutch in this one, he will. So I'm going to take the Tigers. And finally, we have Army and Cincinnati, what I think will be the game of the week. Now for Cincinnati, could they be that group of five team that is the best group of five team and gets a New Year's Six bid? Now I don't know how they're going to work out bowl games this year, if they're going to do so at all, or if they're just going to choose the four teams of the college football playoff and just say, well, that's the postseason. Sorry, everybody else. Really no money this year for the universities. So Cincinnati, they looked good against Austin Peay last week, but it was Austin Peay. And for Army, they did look good against Middle Tennessee. And the triple option is always going to be the X factor when you're talking about an Army team. And I will say this. Army has a history of playing competitive football against some of the powerhouses amongst the Power 5 conferences. Just last year, we saw them play out their best effort against Michigan, almost pulling off the upset. They took Oklahoma to overtime a couple of years ago with Kyler Murray at quarterback for the Sooners. So could the third time be the charm in Army pulling off an upset? Even though Cincinnati really isn't a powerhouse, I'd say they'd be considered a powerhouse based off of their conference kind of being talked about as, could it be possible they could be that sixth power conference? Like, I feel like Cincinnati is a powerhouse with a group of five type of school. And I think Army is going to do it. And how they're going to do it is they're going to utilize that triple option. They're going to take long possessions, take 7, 8, 9-minute drives. Use the triple option led by your quarterback in Christian Anderson and your running back in Shannon McCoy. Keep Desmond Ridder and the Bearcats on the sidelines. And I think if you're keeping Cincinnati's defense on the field long enough, you're going to gas them out in the fourth quarter. And that's what I think is going to happen. I think the third time is going to be the charm for Army to pull off an upset against what I would say a ranked powerhouse team. I think Army pulls off the upset 35-28. So those are my picks for week 4 of the college football season. I'm really hoping that at least in one of these 7 matchups, we get an exciting finish. We get a thrilling finish. As I said earlier, I think the sky is the limit for the college football season. I can't wait for the Big Ten to start. I can't wait for SEC play, Big 12 play, ACC play, get deeper into the season because we're going to see matchups like Miami and Clemson in weeks to come. We're going to see the Red River Showdown between Oklahoma and Texas in a few weeks. We're going to see Auburn and Georgia soon. We are going to see Florida, Georgia. I think the sky's the limit for college football. I just am optimistic we're going to get a fantastic season. And we also have a lot of group of 5 teams really showing out so far. I mean, Army, even BYU, even though they haven't played in a couple of weeks. They haven't played since Labor Day. Even Cincinnati. I mean, even Marshall. Appalachian State, even though they lost last week, I'd say still a good team. Louisiana, they've already pulled off an upset against Iowa State, and they came back to win last week in overtime, so they're 2-0. I mean, Arkansas State's pulled off an upset against Kansas State, even though they lost to Memphis opening weekend. Memphis is, I think, going to have a good season if they can get back to playing soon. But we'll see what happens because Memphis, they couldn't play last week due to concerns of COVID-19. And I don't think Memphis has played since Arkansas State opening weekend. I mean, even SMU. SMU has potential this year. UCF. It's going to be an exciting one. I hope you all stay tuned for the entire season. It's only week 4. Things are getting exciting. I'm looking forward to college football this week. Enjoy your college football Saturday. And I will talk to you next time for my NFL predictions for week 3. Talk to you then.